it just me, or do these NHL scriptwriters need to come up with a new formula for this Western Conference second round? I feel like I've seen this before.
Yeah, it is a little bit on the strange side that history repeated itself just like that 24 hours later. Yeah, one guy scoring 4 goals in one game once is interesting enough, but 2 players in 2 separate games scoring 4 goals?
Yeah, no, I don't have a whole lot of words for that.
You see, if I had a nickel for every time a player scored 4 goals in a playoff game and still lost the game, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot of money when you think about it, but it's just more strange that it happened twice.
Okay, who let Dr. Doofenshmirtz in here?
Yeah, we've officially lost it.
Oh boy, does it feel good to start off the second round the right way. Vegas Golden Knights win Game 1 of the second round versus the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of, and I can't believe I'm saying this either, 6-4. Yeah, it was a bit of a high-scoring affair, and at least for one player on the Edmonton Oilers, it was a very busy night in the score column, and for the entire Golden Knights roster, it was an equally busy night on the scoring line for the entire team. The big conversation in the media going into this game was whether or not Jay Woodcroft, the coach of the Edmonton Oilers, would put Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl together. And lo and behold, at 5-on-5, that's exactly what happened as Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid started the game together with Evander Kane on their line. And it didn't take very long for Edmonton to start making a difference, and by Edmonton, I mean Connor McDavid, as not even 2 minutes into the game, he chips a puck up the boards, and a penalty that I may as well call the McDavid tax. Now, to define the McDavid tax, I assume the McDavid tax is a penalty that's taken just because your defenseman isn't as fast as McDavid. Intuitive, I know, but McDavid chips the puck up the boards, and Nick Hague does what he's done all season. He rubs the forward out of the play, but because it's McDavid, it's ruled as interference. And remember in my season preview video, I said it would be of the utmost importance for the Golden Knights to see success in this series to make sure they do their best to stay out of the penalty box, and not even 2 minutes into the series, they're already putting the most potent power play in the NHL on the man advantage. And it wouldn't take very long for the Oilers to make the Golden Knights pay for giving them a man advantage, as there'd be a couple of opportunities. McDavid kept trying to find a seam pass to Draisaitl on the near boards. First one was cut off by Stone, and then a few seconds later, the Golden Knights box kind of collapses in of itself. Stone goes a little too high out to the point. McDavid drives down on the far boards, sends a seam pass over to Draisaitl, who one times it past Laurent Brossoit just underneath the glove, and they're off and running with a 1-goal lead. So yeah, not the greatest start I've ever seen for the Golden Knights, but it's okay. That tends to happen, and bad things tend to happen every once in a while, and it's all about how you answer back. And the Golden Knights, in the form of Ivan Barbashev and a really, really, really bad defensive turnover by the Oilers, just decided to take it upon themselves to square up the game just 50-some-odd seconds later, as I believe it was Barbashev cut off a pass in front of the net, passed it to Waugh, who put a good shot on Skinner, who saved it. Bit of a kerfuffle in front of the net ensues, and ultimately Ivan Barbashev finds it in the slot, spins around, and rips it past Skinner to tie the game up at 1. Golden Knights only trailed for about 40 seconds, and so that's the best way to answer back and, level up the game nice and early. It was almost as if the game never got off of 0-0 in the first place, because the Oilers didn't have enough time to build off of their first goal, in terms of momentum. If anything, answering back so quickly gave the VGK more momentum than a 0-0 game otherwise would have. But the Golden Knights weren't done quite yet in this first period, and even in this first phase of the first period, as about 5 minutes after the Ivan Barbashev goal, William Karlsson leads a really, really fast breakout out of the defensive end. The Golden Knights have been really good on the transition game already, and that line in particular had already had a couple of really good transitional opportunities, and on this one, they were able to get a true 3-on-2. Karlsson and Smith kind of work their way into the zone on the near boards, while Michael Amadio comes flying in on the other side with basically no Oilers defenseman on there, as the two defenders had collapsed around what they believed to be the two most dangerous players on the ice. And I don't blame him. Riley Smith and William Karlsson are both elite goal scorers in their own right, and Michael Amadio is Michael Amadio.
And I'm really talking bad about my number buddy here.
But ultimately, Amadio is able to catch a pass from the far side of the ice from Karlsson, and ultimately he was able to take the puck and snap it home past Skinner. And what felt like the game was going to get out of hand for the Oilers just 10 minutes earlier is now a 2-1 Golden Knights lead. Through the entire middle of the first period, especially after the Golden Knights scored the goal to go up 2-1, it really felt like the Oilers didn't have much of an answer. There was a stretch from about the 15-minute mark of the first period all the way down to about 6 minutes left to go in the period where the Oilers didn't register a shot, which was ridiculous. All those weapons, all that firepower, McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, Nugent-Hopkins, Yamamoto, Nurse, this, that, the other, all that firepower, and they couldn't muster a shot on goal for over 12 minutes of game time is honestly kind of dumbfounding, even as a Golden Knights fan. I knew our defense was pretty solid and pretty stout, but I didn't think it was that crazy good. Ultimately, the next thing to happen in the period would be the Oilers would take a rather consequential penalty, even by their standards. Now, everybody's talked about how good the Oilers' power play is. Their penalty kill does leave a little bit of something to be desired, and while the Golden Knights' power play isn't good by any stretch of the imagination, I think being the second or third worst currently left in the playoffs, but there's only so much weapons you can do, especially when you've got fast players. You've got Draisaitl and McDavid out there killing penalties most of the time, so you have to acknowledge the shorthanded threat. Well, the Golden Knights wouldn't be able to hold the zone on their first wave of the power play. The same first line stays out there, gets another good clean zone entry, and ultimately starts working the puck around. Pucks goes up to the top of the zone and ultimately is fired on net. Somehow Mark Stone, the most dangerous player on the ice if you're the Oilers, is alone in the slot, and he's able to receive a shot pass from the point and tip it under the arm of Skinner and into the back of the net for the Golden Knights' first power play goal of the series on their first power play of the series, and ultimately put the Golden Knights up by a score of 3-1. Now, I was feeling pretty good at this point. Stone, big excited. I do have one comment, though. He did take a bit of a cross-check to the back, which was a theme throughout this first period. The Oilers were taking pot shots at the lower part of his back with cross-checks, and ultimately nothing was getting called. I'm not saying the NHL should crack down on this, but I'm saying they need to be aware of the fact that the Oilers are actually targeting an area of which the players had not one, but 2 surgeries on in the last year. And so the period starts to wind down. After that power play goal, I figured, okay, the Golden Knights are going to be fine. They'll take a 2-goal lead into the intermission. And with 20 seconds to go, I figured, okay, it's going to be fine. The Oilers get a nice clean zone entry, work the puck around, and ultimately, not sure how, not sure why, but what happened, and Leon Draisaitl got left alone below the goal line in the corner with nobody on him. And I keep saying the most dangerous player on the ice. I think that's the 4th time I've said it in the last 5 minutes. But Leon Draisaitl was the most dangerous person on the ice in that position. Laurent Brossoit is down, hugging the post in the butterfly position. And ultimately, he can't cover everything because he has to respect the pass. And while Alec Martinez was there covering the pass, I'm not sure whether or not Brossoit knew that, as he was still kind of shaded more towards the middle of the ice. Ultimately, Draisaitl is Draisaitl, and he does high-skill things, and he decides to bank it off of the back of Laurent Brossoit's nameplate / the back of his helmet and into the goal to only cut the deficit down to 1. And that's where the period would end, with the Oilers trailing the Golden Knights 3-2. And nothing happened in the second period. That's all we have to say. Nothing happened in the second period.
What do you mean nothing happened in the second period? There was 20 minutes of hockey. At least something happened. And how long was the official NHL's recap of this game?
Right at 9 minutes long. Why?
Because only 50 seconds of that 9 minutes were used to cover the events of the second period. All that happened was a failed power play and a good opportunity by Jonathan Marchessault right as the power play ended.
Now, while nothing of consequence happened during the second period, right as the second period ended, Alex Pietrangelo did something that 24 hours later, I still don't know what he was trying to do. The horn had gone, and I guess he saw an Oilers player skating at him, and he figured, I may as well hit this guy or else he's going to hit me. Throws an elbow, hits him right in the face, right in front of the ref. It's the easiest call the refs ever had to make. And so the Oilers, down 1 goal going into the third, with the most dangerous power play in the NHL, get to start the third period on the power play. Yay. And wouldn't you know it, that power play cashes in. Minute 35 in, another scramble play out front. A little bit of mayhem. Everybody knows a little bit of mayhem. Anything can happen. Zach Hyman pulls the puck out of the pile on a bit of a shaky rebound by Laurent Brossoit, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in this case. Ultimately, Draisaitl is Johnny on the spot, and he completes the hat trick and ties up the game. Minute 35 into the third period. Were there any hats that went onto the ice? I don't know. Do I care? Also no. So similar to the first period, the Golden Knights give up a bit of a bad power play goal in the early minutes, and it feels like the game has changed. It's now tied 3-3, and everybody's feeling that the unstoppable McDavid-Draisaitl train is about to leave the station and start ransacking all of Las Vegas. Until you remember that the Golden Knights are an incredible 5-on-5 team, have been for the entire season, and they don't know when to give up. And Ivan Barbashev, just like he did in the first period, just over 1 minute later, on a high slot deflection on a point shot, deflects it past Skinner and in the net to reinstate the Golden Knights 4-3 lead. And then then 50 seconds later, Mark Stone would get a clear break in and feed Chandler Stevenson a cross crease feed. He'd one-time it. It would hit Skinner in the palm of the glove, deflect down and behind him. And it went from a 3-3 game to a 5-3 game in 50 seconds. The Oilers were in the game for 1 minute and 1 second when it was 3-3. And then in a span of 50 seconds, it went from 3-3 to 5-3. And, the Fortress was rocking. I'm jumping up and down in my living room, really, really excited that it looks like the Golden Knights are going to be fine. And the period did kind of settle down for a little bit with one notable exception. My biggest fear happened. Our fourth line got stuck out there against McDavid. And ultimately, that's not what you want. I trust the fourth line to do everything. I trust them to look after my kids when I have them. I trust them to do my taxes. But I don't trust them to defend Connor McDavid. And ultimately, that's kind of what happened. It was a bit of an odd man rush, 2-on-1 after the Golden Knights got outworked in their offensive zone, sprung the other way. I believe it was McDavid and Zach Hyman on the break-in. Ultimately, Hyman draws both defensemen into the middle. McDavid finds Draisaitl streaking into the zone behind the play. He's all by himself, and he shoots it off the inside of the blocker of Laurent Brossoit and in the net for his fourth goal of the game. And so now it's 5-4, and there's a lot of time left. With a great deal of time comes with, an elevated stress level, elevated heart rate, and, I was dealing with all those things, as I'm sure every single fan who was in the Fortress and every single Golden Knights fan watching on TV was undergoing at the same time. And the minutes kind of ticked down, and it felt like the Golden Knights were this close to losing grip on the game. They had a string of 4 or 5 possessions in a row that resulted in icings, which was really stressful. A couple of decent scoring opportunities by the Oilers, but beyond that, it felt like the Golden Knights were doing a good job keeping everything to the outside with a couple of exceptions. And ultimately, as time kept ticking down, you started to wonder, so they're going to have to pull Skinner at some point. And they just could never seem to get to pulling Skinner. And with about a minute to go in the game, it had been about a minute since they had been trying. They were trying to get Skinner off the ice from the 2-minute mark. And it was just the ultimate game of, should I stay or should I go? Skinner would start skating towards the bench, and the Golden Knights would get possession in the defensive zone and chip it out and back into the neutral zone, which would cause Skinner to retreat back to the net. And somewhere in this confusion of Skinner coming to the bench, Skinner going back to the net, Skinner going to the bench, Skinner going back to the net, somebody must have gotten their signals crossed, because there was a stretch where the Oilers had 6 players in the play and Skinner standing at the hash marks. And ultimately, the refs noticed that, and with a minute to go, they called too many men on the ice, which is one of those strange penalties. And, I know the whistles tend to go away with less than 2 minutes to go in a playoff game, especially a second-round game that's only a 1-goal game. But it's like puck over the glass. It is a very binary thing. It either happens or it doesn't. And in this case, 6 is more than 5, and they hadn't gotten Skinner off yet. That's a penalty. So the Golden Knights go to the power play with about a minute to go, and ultimately, what's going to happen. The Oilers are going to try and win the faceoff. They're still going to pull their goalie anyway, because 5-on-5 is more likely than 5-on-4 shorthanded. And so they're going to vacate the net, and, they're going to do what they were going to do anyway, just with one less guy on the ice this time. They're not going to go with, 12 like they tried to before the penalty was called. And ultimately, they would get what they want. They would win the faceoff. They'd get it out to the neutral zone. And ultimately, the Golden Knights would just kind of play a chip play and just kind of let them have it. They'd get a clean break in. And this was kind of a moment that may be postered one day. Golden Knights may turn this into a poster one day. When McDavid enters the zone with the puck on his stick, he's being shadowed not by a defenseman, not by a traditional defensive forward. He's not being shadowed by Pietrangelo or Theodore Martinez or even Carlson or Smith. The 5 players who you would assume would be on the ice in a defensive capacity. He's being defended by Jack Eichel. So you have the number 1 pick in the 2015 draft. being defended by the number 2 pick in the 2015 draft. And in this case, 2 was greater than 1. As Jack Eichel pickpocketed McDavid, turned around, Pietrangelo tried to take the puck, but I'm pretty sure Jack was like, no, I got this. And he just pulled out the lob wedge and chipped it down the ice, curled, dipped and bobbed all the way down through the hash marks. Everything looked good, and it was good. Goal for Jack Eichel. And it hit the camera bank at the back of the net. There was no chance it wasn't going to go in. It was perfect center cut. And ultimately, 6-4, the Fortress goes nuts. Jack Eichel has more goals in this series than anybody else on the Oilers, not named Leon Draisaitl. So that's a thing. And ultimately, the Golden Knights hang on to win 6-4, and the Victory Flamingos come flying from all over the place. In the wake of that game, it's very obvious that the Golden Knights didn't exactly do a great job of defending Leon Draisaitl, but beyond that, they actually did a really good job of defending everybody else. The odds of having 2 players on back-to-back nights score 4 goals and still lose is really saying something. Now, the odds of 2 players scoring 4 goals in back-to-back nights is already astronomical as it is, but to have both of them lose, and to have them both lose by almost the exact same score, I don't even want to try and calculate the odds of that one. But Joe Pavelski and Leon Draisaitl now have suffered the exact same fate 24 hours apart. And I have a little bit less sympathy for Leon than I do for Joe. But that's not important. The interesting thing about this is, obviously, Bruce Cassidy was somewhat happy with the way the Golden Knights played, but wasn't overly happy with the way they defended. The Edmonton Oilers were 2 for 3 on the power play to the Golden Knights 2 for 4 on the power play, with one of those being the empty net game sealer by Eichel. Gonna have to be a little bit better on the penalty kill. 2 for 3 isn't sustainable. I know I've said on numerous occasions that you got to spot them too, just because of the propensity that penalties get called in the postseason, but I would really like to see that number go down to 1 or even 0 for a game, and I know Bruce would like to see that the same thing. What's really weird is during the postgame presser by Oilers reporters, Oilers coach Jay Woodcroft was asked, was that your game? And he said no. And I don't really agree with that sentiment. I've been watching the Oilers for a while. Everybody in the Pacific Division knows about the Oilers having to play them 4 times per season. Woodcroft said the Oilers were too loose in this game, too fast. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a second. That's the entire Oilers MO. They're fast, they're loose, they rely on high-end talent. And I guess he may have been alluding to their defensive zone because, yeah, they did make a couple of strange turnovers in the defensive zone that resulted in Golden Knights opportunities. The first goal of the game on Barbashev is a pretty key indicator of the fact they were trying to do things too quickly. But they had no answer 5-on-5. They had 2 power play goals, and the Golden Knights had 2 power play goals, obviously. But beyond that, the Oilers only scored 1 goal 5-on-5 that was shot from in front of Laurent Brossoit. So if I'm the Oilers, I'm a little bit concerned about the 5-on-5 scoring. The depth for the Golden Knights, too, was also a big factor. Obviously, it's weird to say that Stone's on the 3rd line, but Stone, Howard, and Stevenson as that 3rd line tacked a goal. Michael Amadio got 1. Ivan Barbashev got 2 from the 2nd line. There's the depth there. Keegan Colasar, Nick Waugh, Will Carrier were, the Bash brothers of old. They had some good opportunities, and I think they're going to continue to be dangerous this series. It was just a strange game to watch, as even though it was a tight game, it felt like after the Oilers scored every time, the Golden Knights were immediate with a response, and it was honestly really comforting to see, knowing that the team wouldn't roll over and die to the team that the media has already christened the Stanley Cup champions. You guys look at the odds and tell me they're not angling for Oilers in 3. But ultimately, it's going to take them a little bit longer this time. Golden Knights take Game 1. Now, Game 2 isn't on Friday. I'm a little bit upset about that, as it should be. But no, something about TV and the schedule and arena events stuff. I don't know. There's more going on than I can understand. But ultimately, Game 2 is a matinee-ish start in Vegas, 4 o'clock local start, 3 o'clock local start, 4 local, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain. Why did I just go over all the times? Oh my God. You can see this series has just fried my brain, and I don't even have to try to explain it. Ultimately, Golden Knights take Game 1. Everything's feeling good. And ultimately, game 2 will be a bit of a watershed moment. The Oilers are going to come out very different. They're going to make adjustments. I have a feeling game 2 is going to feel and look so much more different than game 1 did. While this game was a 6-4 barn burner, it wouldn't shock me if game 2 had a final score more close to like 3-1, 3-2. I'm just not sure which way. It wouldn't shock me if it went to overtime, honestly. This series is going to be incredible TV, and it may or may not put me in the hospital, especially if it gets stressful. So ultimately, I'm just going to leave it at that. Golden Knights take game 1, take a 1-zip lead in the series, and looked pretty good while doing it. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys viewing this, giving me 20 minutes out of your day to talk about the game and talk about this team, and I will catch you guys in the next one.